Good morning, folks, and thanks for joining us again for another Wednesday workshop hosted by yours truly, Jeremy Tang, and my partner, Zach. Before we begin, though, I just wanted to point out a couple things. If you've been haven't been following along, we've actually switched our trial model to a limited trial model. We used to be a 30-day trial, and now you can try Bloodhound for free with no time limit. And then you only need to purchase when you're ready to trade real money or backtest more than 60 days worth of intraday data. So we think this new model can be great for those people who have quite enough time to explore all the features of Bloodhound. And of course, you can if you're a trial user, excuse me, if you're a trial user, we have no problem with you joining us in the webinar. In fact, we'd love having you guys in here so that you can learn the product and take your time with it, and make sure it's something for you before you go ahead and purchase. One thing I'd like to bring out, and I'm just looking kind of at the people in the room here, and a lot of you guys are existing customers and maybe have used Bloodhound before, so now you're at the point where you may have some ideas or suggestions for us, and we love feedback. We love to hear what you users are doing with our product, and of course want to hear ideas that you have to improve it. So what I did there, I just went to our support center. It's just under that support menu, and if you go down with this stuff here, you'll notice that we have a couple forum postings down here, and these are kind of unfortunate, a little bit hidden, but they work just fine nonetheless. And what I want to bring your attention to is this feature requests. Okay, so if you have any ideas, we'd love to hear from you. This is kind of how the feedback that we get from you guys, and a lot of you guys have just been submitting support tickets directly to us, which is just fine, but it's also nice to sort of share it with the community. But a lot of our future development in terms of how we prioritize our development time and energy is going to be determined on the feedback we get from you guys. So a lot of these function nodes that came up that we were working on in version 1.1, it was originated from a few users that came up with some great ideas with and suggested to us. And so if you guys have any other suggestions, please just go ahead and go to the support forums, click the feature requests, and this is the magic button here. Just add an article. You guys can just do it. I don't even think you have to log in as a user to do it. Oh, pardon me, you do. So, go ahead and just log in. And I won't do that right now, but, once you log in, you can just post an article just like you're in the forum. Again, we love your feedback. We always want to hear from you. So, and likewise, feel free to let us know if you see any problems with the product that maybe we've overlooked, or if maybe you've encountered a bug. It always helps us a great deal if you're able to help us identify how to reproduce some of these a bug that you may see, and we're always glad to help you out and try to improve the product for everyone as well. So with that aside, I'm just gonna pop back to the disclaimer. You should see that now on our screen here. Okay. And apologize, it looks like the screen is a little bit messed up, but I'm just going to hand it off to Zach now, and again, just a reminder that everything here is for educational purposes only, and we're not making any trade recommendations of any sort. So without any further ado, I'm going to pass the torch off to Zach.
Hey guys, welcome again, and just waiting for my screen project. Alright, you should be seeing my screen any minute now, any moment. Alright, could I get, alright, thanks Randy, I appreciate it. Okay. A lot of you guys look familiar, but just in case there's anybody new in here, I'll go over some support options available to you guys again. If you use Skype, I have a Skype account for Shark Indicators here. So up on the top here, you can see my screen name. It's Zach White, S-I. So feel free to add me as a contact if you'd like. I'll leave that up there for a moment. And next, let me bring up the website. So up at the top of the page, right, you have a menu bar. So if you go down to Contact Us, and so you can ask your questions here. Just subject line, ask your question. If you would like a one-on-one training session with me, you can book an appointment with me, and I'll use our GoToMeeting, and we can do screen sharing and go over your system in private. And let's see, some other sources for if there's anybody in here that's kind of starting off. If you go to our support center, I'll show you some detailed questions that have been asked. I've created a tutorial for them. So if we go to, so you'll notice now you're at, this is Shark Indicators and this is Zendesk. This is our support center software. And so if you click on support forums, you'll see there's 4 different forums here. So the tips and tricks is let's see, answers back that have been detailed, and so there's like various common questions that we get a lot of. So if we just click on one of these, let me go to the price action one. Well, anyways, so for some reason we get asked this double crossover a lot. I have a feeling there's probably some vendor out there teaching this. So, and you can see that there's a screenshot tutorial kind of walks you through on how to set this up. You can click on the picture, it'll open up into a full-size picture. There. Also, we have on the forum, the community help is kind of like general support. So we get this kind of, think of it as kind of like our FAQ section, where a lot of common questions that come in that are not, Bloodhound system related, just kind of like people asking questions, what can Bloodhound do? That goes into the community help. If you do have a feature request, Jeremy already showed you this, but you can submit a feature request here as well, and of course announcements. But all these announcements, I believe you guys will probably be getting all the announcements by email. And let me go back to the Shark Indicators website. Other various support. So we have the documentation on each solver, video tutorials, tips and tricks. So the tips and tricks are essentially kind of like the video tutorials, but the tips and tricks are more about kind of like setting up, it's kind of like the tips and tricks on the support form that I just showed you, but in video format. And then, of course, our recorded webinars are in this section here. So if you're looking for any template files, some of the webinars and the tips and tricks, there are template files posted with the video. So let me bring that up here. So there we go. So there's a Bloodhound template and a chart template, and it states right here where to save these files because they go in different folders. So these templates are to accompany the video. And so what I was showing you was there's a download section, and the download section is just kind of like it's a location where all of the files reside of any type. So there are some files up here that you may not find anywhere else, and that would be under the Bloodhound templates. And so what I've started to do, and I haven't fully posted all these up, is I'm kind of creating some starter signals. Once again, it's kind of like just to help people get going and maybe help give you guys some ideas. But I'm trying to look for, see, probably on the next page here. If I hit next, go to page 2. Oh, I don't see it there. I have a couple of template files that are kind of like simple signal files for Bloodhound, and well, I apologize. Maybe I haven't posted them yet. Yeah, so I guess I haven't posted them yet. I'm sorry about that. I thought I had, but I will be posting some Bloodhound template files of just kind of simple signals. So keep an eye on that for that, and I'm sure we'll announce that by email for you guys. All right. So with that, I will jump into where we left off yesterday. But first, I'm just starting off with a blank chart here, and I'm just going to run through on how to get Bloodhound onto the chart. So it is an indicator. So I'll bring up the indicator list, and Bloodhound is under SI for shark indicators. So let me scroll down to the SIs. So there's Bloodhound. Just add that onto the chart. And the next thing I need to do is I need to name my template. It's always good to start off with a name. You don't have to, but it's just a good idea. And you'll see the name is blank, so I'm going to hit the change button. And I have a name here already that I can start with. So let's start with last week's, and then I'm just going to put the current date on there, which today is the 19th already. Man. All right, save that, and now you can see there's the name up there. Another good thing to do, just to save a little time, is if you're building a system that uses multiple time frames, it's a good idea to go ahead and add the chart now. It's not a requirement, but it just saves a little time. You can just click the chart button there and add what other time frame you need. So I'll add a 15-minute. I can click OK. So now you'll see that the name of my template file shows up here. And click OK. And we're ready. You see Bloodhound's down here at the bottom. All right, and then you'll notice that there's a button on the chart now, a button and a pull-down menu. So clicking the button brings up Bloodhound's interface, like so, and then you can see we have the default, the 2 time frames on there. So the reason why I suggested adding your time frames ahead of time is if I add another time frame and I close up, you'll see now with the new version of 106, you'll see that now when you add another time frame, you get a announcement here that says you have to hit F5 to refresh the chart. And then what that does is that loads that additional time frame into Bloodhound by refreshing the chart. So, and when I added the time frame in at the very beginning, when I added Bloodhound to the chart, you'll notice I didn't have to refresh the chart. You know, it's not a big deal, but so let me go and I'm going to delete that off of there. So that kind of gets into another change. For any of you who've been around for a while, you'll remember that we used to have two different modes. So this is for you guys who've been using an older version of Bloodhound. That we used to have two different modes. We used to have setup mode, which you had to go to the indicators list and click on Bloodhound here and then bring up the interface by this button. And that used to be the only way that you could add a chart, a secondary time frame to your system, was through the indicator interface. But now that is not the case. So now we managed to just go to just one interface now. So with what we used to call real-time mode, by clicking on the button, that's what we used to call the real-time interface. Well, now it's all real-time interface. So, because now you can see there's a chart button on here. So, all right. So, where I left off last week was with the support and resistance solver. So let me get this on here, and I'm gonna, let's see, take a look at my chart here, and all right, I'm going to start off with a simple demonstration for the support resistance solver. And I'm just going to use this fixed price here of 1.3070 to demonstrate the support resistance solver. So if I have a fixed price line here that I want to use as my support resistance solver, what I need to do is enable the use indicator. So I'll turn that on, and you'll see the indicator section appears now. And so under the type, you'll see under type there's all these different types you can select. So I have the ability to use an absolute value. I could use the closing price of the candle. You could analyze volume, or you can select whatever indicator. So this is the default one, indicator. The swings, if I select swings, it opens up another interface for using the swings indicator, right? So you can set all the indicator's parameters here, so you can see you have number of swings and swing sensitivity, right? So these are the same settings that are actually in the indicator itself. So it's kind of a shortcut. Instead of, right, there's two ways of doing this. You could just use the indicator, and then you could set this to the SI swings indicator, or a little shortcut is just to use this, and you can set all your settings here. And then as another little shortcut, we have the linear regression channel. So instead of having to select the linear regression channel, you could select the linear regression channel here if you wanted to, but as a shortcut, you can set your parameters here. So for this demonstration, I'm going to just use an absolute value, and I'm going to put in here that price value of that line, and let's see. So headwind mode is the default mode for this solver, and to help make it easier to demonstrate, I'm going to turn off this filter. I'll kind of go back and explain what this filter does later on, but let me just kind of explain the basics here. All right, so I'm going to turn that off, and then I'm going to go switch the distances to ticks. Ticks are easier to visualize on the chart. All right, so I'm working with ticks now. And let's see. Okay, I'm going to set my minimum distance to 10 ticks and set my ideal distance to 20 ticks. And once again, I'm going to turn this off for it helps to visualize what's going on. Turn off the no support resistance breakout, so that way the only output that we have on is the at ideal distance. So remember, our ideal distance is this setting right here, which is 20 ticks. And then our minimum distance, 10 ticks, is this setting right here, which is set to 0. So what these two settings are used for is, so when price approaches this minimum distance of 10 ticks, the output is going to equal 0. So let me line that up. Okay, so right here. Here, let me stretch the chart out so it's a little easier to see. All right, I'm going to get an arrow on the chart. And let me get one more arrow on the chart. Okay. And so there, to help see what's going on. So what I'm trying to point out here is you can see the output, the short output, is at about 0.1, right? It's almost at 0. And the closing price right here is 11 ticks away from our support resistance line. So remember, here's our, let me beef this up so it's pretty obvious. Change the color, let me thicken it, make it dashed. Okay, so here's our support resistance line. And so we're at 11 ticks away. Now you'll see that when we're 10 ticks away, the output of the solver is going to equal 0 here. Right? So we can see that when the closing price of these bars, they're less than 10 ticks away, and we can see that there is absolutely no output of the solver. So so this whole area here, right? All the closing prices of all these bars are under this 10 tick threshold, right? Which is right here at 3080. This is our 10 tick threshold right here. So let's see, where's the draw? Is this, oh. So I want to draw a line on there, and F2. All right, so F2. All right, so this white line is our 10 tick threshold. So whenever price is below this 10 tick threshold, as set by, let me bring up the interface again, and let me get rid of my Skype window there. Okay. All right, I'm just going to adjust things so we can see both screens at the same time. All right, so we have, there we go. All right, so our minimum distance of 10 ticks is where the solver doesn't give us any kind of output. And then we can see that once price is above, we can see that we're over here in this case right here, as price gets closer to this 20 tick distance, So let me mark that on the chart. So this 20 tick distance here is where the solver's output will reach an output of 1. Right, so we can see the outputs are varying from 0 to 1 as we have established in our output section here. So with our ideal distance set to 20 ticks, when price reaches this 20 tick value, as it did right here, as it did right there, let me mark this guy. Oh, wrong one. There we go. So as this bar touched on the closing price of the bar, touched on that 20 tick, we can see the output reached 1 as set by this right here. So if I change this 1 to 0.5, you can see there's no more shaded background because now this value here is at 0.5. Right, so we can go across and we can look at the value over here on the right hand side is set to 0.5. So this solver can only give us an output from 0 to 0.5. So let me set that back to 1. All right. So something else to note is we can see on this bar here, let's see, the price of that bar is $30.89. So it's 1 tick away from our 20 tick threshold, 1 tick away. But we can see that the background got painted, right? And that's because the solver's output is at 0.9. And so it crossed the threshold value here. So I don't know if you guys can see this dark red line, but let me go and change that. I'll show you how you can change that. So it's under the line section here. You can go and change the color of your threshold line if you'd like. So let me set it to white, something real easy to see. There we go. So now we can see our threshold value pretty easily. Let me get the Bloodhound interface up. So you probably begin to notice that every time the chart does a refresh, right? So if I go and change one of the indicators, the chart has to refresh itself when you close the indicator window. And what that does is, because Bloodhound is an indicator, the Bloodhound interface has to close in order for the chart to refresh. So then you just have to open the Bloodhound interface back up. So let's see, what else can I explain about this? So I think that kind of covers it pretty well. If you guys are still kind of unclear about the relationship between minimum distance and the output minimum distance, then we have the ideal distance target and its relationship to the output ideal distance. Just let me know and I'll try and expand upon that even more. But essentially that's how it works. So, the default setting for the solver is that when price reaches this minimum distance, your output is going to be 0. In other words, so kind of like a typical common use for these two settings is that you want to set your minimum distance at a distance where where price is too close to your resistance line to take a trade. All right, so say if, let me shrink this up here. So let's say somehow your system tells you to go short up here, near this top. and it tells you to go short, right? But you're going short into this support line here. And of course you want to make sure that you have enough distance to take a trade into this support line in case price bounces off of it like it did here, right? So you wouldn't want, say like if you get a signal to go short right here, or better yet, if you get a signal to go short right here, right, you really wouldn't want to take that short because you're a little too close to the support line. So this minimum distance is what you want to set for being too close to your support line. And your ideal distance really is kind of like anything greater than your ideal distance is where you want price to be away, right? So your ideal distance being up here is really, you want to set that to making sure that there's enough room to take a short into support here. Right, so ideal distance gives you enough room to take a short into the support, and minimum distance is like an absolute distance at which you absolutely won't take a trade into the support line. But as you can see how Bloodhound's interpolating between the 20 tick ideal distance and the 10 tick minimum distance, you can see that the output's reducing to 0. So really, realistically, you're using these two values. The system really probably wouldn't ever take a trade short, probably somewhere around here. Because that's kind of like where the output of the solver's value is below the threshold. So somewhere in this area really is kind of where your system would not take a trade. It just depends on how, it depends on how many solvers you're using. It depends if you're using a logic board or not, as to where inside this range that your system would stop taking a trade. Okay, so let me switch this over to Tailwind mode now. And you can see that my distances switched over to ATRs, and that's because the solver remembers your distance for each mode. So if I go back to headwind mode, you can see it remembers my 10 and 20 tick settings that I had in there. So if I switch over to tailwind mode, I have to go in there and set those up. And once again, I'm going to put them to ticks because it's easier to visualize. And let me find another spot. Here. Here we go. I'll use this spot right here. Let me unlock it. It's going to move this down here to, let's see, was it 1.3050? Okay, so I'm going to use this now as my support line. So let me change that value. And so let's, I'm going to make these distances a little closer. Let's go 10, 5, and 10 ticks. All right, let me draw a line on here. So, right. right, so the dashed line is our ideal distance here, and the solid line is our maximum distance. So once again, our ideal distance is where the solver's output is going to give us a 1, a full 1 for a trade. Right, so we can see here when price is below our ideal distance, we can see that's when the solver gives us a 1 output. And what happened? So what happened here in this bar where we're missing an output? That's because price actually equals the resistance line value or the support line value. So if I change that, so let's say I go, if I tweak this a little bit and go 09, oops, 49. So I kind of cheated a little bit. See, now you can see that bar is now giving us a long output now. But let me put it back to 5. And I'll kind of get back to this in a little bit later. But let me just kind of demonstrate the ideal and maximum distance again for Tailwind mode. So when price is at our maximum distance, in other words, the maximum distance away from your support line at which the solver gives an output of 0 or whatever is set right here. So in other words, what you're kind of setting up is that when price, the maximum distance is saying that price is too far away from the support line to take a trade, to take a bounce trade. So say like you have a system where you're kind of trying to pick bounces off of support and resistance lines. So if price is up here at this maximum distance or further away, you're too far away from your support line to get a signal, to take a bounce trade long away from it. And so the ideal distance is where you're telling the solver, I want price to get within this ideal distance, and that's close enough to give me a signal for a bounce trade away. So, so once price gets within 5 ticks of our support line, that's when you would like to get long, to take a long trade. So, all right, so let me get back to where price actually equals the support line there. And let's see, Now I was thinking this ignore if within range. Actually, that's not really too applicable for Tailwind mode. Yeah, well, that's kind of like one of the limitations of programming. So let me show you another way you can compensate for this. So what I like to do is when you only have one support or resistance line, instead of using the support resistance solver, I like to use the comparison solver. So let me add this on here, and we're going to set indicator A to our price, and then indicator B, I'm going to set it to that absolute value here of 1.3050. And what I'm going to do is change the output settings here. Let me turn that other solver off. Okay, so I'll set this to 0. And so what I'm going to use is this neutral setting. So set that to 1. Set the short to 1 there. Turn that off and turn that off. Now I need to set the number of ticks that I'm going to consider the neutral area. Right, so you can see the neutral is nested between the small amount and this small amount. And the same down here, neutral is nested between the small amount values here. So the small amount setting is what determines what is the neutral zone. So you can see right now it's set to 0 ticks. So when price exactly equals our support resistance value right here, or the line, you can see Bloodhound's giving us an output now. But typically, right, price never moves to your absolute price, right? Market movement is kind of a living entity, right? So it always creates these area zones that never really creates an absolute value. So to create a neutral zone or a neutral area, I can set this to 5 ticks. And so now you can see whenever price is within this 5-tick range, we're getting an output from that solver. Let me kind of scroll along and see if price is going to get below that. All right, let me go forward in the chart and see what. There we go. That's kind of what I'm looking for. Oops. All right, I'm going to draw a line on here representing the 5-tick. Okay, so this. So there's our 5 ticks below, and let's see here. Here's our 5 ticks above. So we can see that whenever price is within this 5-tick zone, that we're getting an output from that solver. All right, so that is another way of analyzing support and resistance. So, but as you can see, the benefit, the limitation of using the comparison is you can only analyze one value, one support resistance value at a time per solver. The benefits of using the support resistance solver is if you're using an indicator, which most commonly you will, then let me go and pick an indicator here. So I'm going to go down to, let's see, the pivots. All right, so if I use the pivots, so we can see that there's all of these pivot lines. And so this solver, as you can see, I can do select all, and this solver allows you to select all of the plots available. And so this solver will analyze all of these plots that have been selected within just one solver. So you don't need a solver for each plot. So that's kind of the benefits. That is the major benefit of using the support resistance solver. So, but it's a lot easier to kind of demonstrate what's happening just by using one value here. All right, so let me get back to the support resistance solver, and yeah, so here we can see, we're in Tailwind mode again. All right, yeah, so this is actually a good spot to kind of show what's going on. So we're in Tailwind mode. Our ideal distance is 5 ticks, which is shown by the white lines here. And so we can see that when price is above the support line, we're getting a long output, telling us, essentially telling us that we could be getting a bounce. Price could be bouncing off our support line for a long trade. But then as soon as price punches through that support line, now making it a resistance line, then the solver switches over to giving us a short output, telling us that we could be getting ready for price, bouncing off the resistance line down to the short side. Whereas here, so here's another difference with the comparison solver. Using the solver in this way, using the neutral zones, it's a non-directional. It gives us a non-directional indication, and so your other solvers, the other components of your system, would determine what direction you want to take a trade. So don't worry about getting a long and a short at the same time, because your other solvers are probably going to be telling you, we want to go long, and so the so the other solvers would I guess overcome the short output to ultimately give you a long output for a long trade. All right. Let me see. Randy's got a question here, or a comment. You could mention that if the type is, say, moving average, its output would be based on that. So I think Randy, you were talking about the type section, I'm assuming here. So let me go back to that. So let's see. Well, Randy, I'm not quite sure what you're getting at, because there's no moving average in the type, but you could set the type to indicator and then put a moving average in there. All right, so I could put, let me put an EMA in there, an EMA 14. All right, thanks, Randy. So I can put EMA 14, and then we put that on the chart as well. There we go. Yeah, this is another, I guess, something that's slightly different about the support resistance solver is you'll notice that right now you'll see that there's no output from the solver, even though price is within 5 ticks of the red moving average. And you'll notice that when I brought up this indicator selector window, that these were not checked. Everything was unchecked. Right, so that's slightly different from the other solvers. right? And that's because the support resistance solvers allows you to select select as many plots as you want. So by default, this solver doesn't select any plots. So just keep that in mind. That's what's a little different about this. So that way you go in and actually select, make sure that the plots that you want to analyze are selected instead of defaulting to all of them. So as soon as I select them, there we go. So in this mode, in Tailwind mode, we can see this solver is kind of acting like it's telling us whenever we're below the EMA or above the EMA within this within this 5-tick range. And as soon as price pulls away more than 5 ticks, we can see the output is looks like it's just less than the 0.8 here. So we're getting an output, just not enough to paint the background, not enough to meet the threshold value. So, and probably, well, let me change the period here. It's a pretty tight period to give a good demonstration. And now, let me change the period on the solver. All right. So now this is making a little more sense. And so when price pulls away from the EMA, we can see there's no output here. And so then the reverse of this, if we put it back into headwind mode, now, let's see here, we're not getting any signals, and there we go. Great. So now we can see that this long signal here is telling us that we're about 20 ticks away from the EMA line, and so that we have enough room to take a long trade into the EMA or into the resistance line. All right, I'm going to take a drink for a second here. Okay, so I'm going to go over some of these other settings here, kind of explain them. So I said I'd get back to the must agree with swing trend. So let me put the swing trend indicator on the chart to help you understand how that is functioning. So once again, the swing trend indicator is under SI, and let's see, there it is. See, swing sensitivity set to 3. Okay. And I made note of what the indicator was set to, so that way I can make sure the solver is set to the same. So it's set to 3 by default. Okay, so on the chart, you can see, so the swing indicator is identifying these lower lows, double tops, these higher lows and higher highs, right? So, but it also Let me see. Let me go back into the indicator here. Oops. And trying to find a good way to visually represent what's happening so you can understand it. All right, I'm going to add another instance of Bloodhound onto the chart here. So give me a moment to get this other Bloodhound set up. All right, and so I don't need a template name. As I mentioned at the beginning, you don't have to have a template name, and I didn't set a template name because I don't care about saving this. This is just to help you guys visualize what the swing indicator is doing. So swing trend. Let's see, this is set up to 3, double top, threshold 0.5, which actually that, I don't think this setting actually, no, this setting is not going to matter. But it's always good to make sure that your indicators and your solvers match up. So, all right, so that looks good. Yeah, see, this is what happens. If you don't have a name on your thing, you're always going to get this little warning, would you like to save your Bloodhound template? It's going to warn you every single time. So if you name it, you don't get this little warning. So what I'm going to do is go into here and actually change this to 0.5. I actually like using 0.5 ATRs to determine double tops and double bottoms as well. I think it makes a little more sense. Okay. So let me explain what the second Bloodhound is doing. So this second Bloodhound, as you saw, has the Dorschden Swing Trend solver on it, which gets its information from this swing indicator that you can see on the chart here, which is identifying the lower lows, higher highs, and so forth. So based on let's see, let me go all the way back. Let me start at the beginning of the chart. It's probably easier. So I'm at the very left edge of my chart, the very beginning of the chart. All right, so we can see that we have this higher high and higher low, which means that you're in an uptrend. All right, so we got another higher high and another higher low. So this indicator, or I should say, you know, this solver, by analyzing the higher highs and higher lows, has determined that we're in an uptrend. Right, so we got another higher high. Now this is a lower high, but that this one lower high is not quite established a downtrend yet. So we haven't established a downtrend until right here at this point. So let me get an arrow going. So we can see the close of that bar, and also I'll stretch the chart out a little bit. So the close of the bar is right where the arrow is. So you can see we broke this higher low. We broke this higher low, and we broke this double bottom. So as soon as you break, your previous low point, then essentially that establishes a downtrend. Also, we have a lower high and a lower high. So once we've done that, once price is broken below this, now you've established a downtrend. Right? And then we come down here and we do actually establish a lower low for the first time. So keep in mind that the trend direction, according to this indicator and according to this solver, has changed as soon as price broke the this, well, really it's looking back one. So as soon as it broke this previous low, then we established a downtrend. Right, so we keep going forward. We're still in the downtrend. Double top. So we got a lower low, a lower high, so on and so forth until we get right here. Oop, hold on. Oh. Got to get my shortcut keys straightened out here. Oh, wrong one. Come on. There we go. There's my arrow. And so what happened is price broke this previous high point. And also we have this. Well, that's a double bottom. It's not really, yeah, it's not really a higher low. It's a double bottom. But the important thing is that we broke this previous low point here. As soon as price broke it, it began to establish an uptrend. All right, so we got a higher high, double bottom. Right, so we keep making higher highs and higher lows, so on. Let's just keep going until right here. Let's see, right here. Where? I can see that the close was right on this previous low point. So I'm not exactly sure why it established a oh, I'm sorry, okay. So this indicator, yeah, so this indicator used the low of the bar to determine that that the previous low had been broken. Yep. So that's what must have established this downtrend right here. So it's going to be this the low here. So we can see that the indicator established a lower low, which broke this previous low point, and so that created a downtrend. And then right here, yeah, let me just take a look back here. So I must be using, yeah, see, so the close on this bar, the close and the high were the same, and same on this bar. The close and the low were the same. Okay, so the indicator is using the high and the low of the bar. That makes sense. All right, so on this, so when we change directions on this guy, oops. So the high of the bar broke our previous high point. And so that is what established our uptrend until here. So once again, if I so we can see the low of this bar broke below this previous low point here. Now you'll notice on this one, it doesn't look consistent, but if you go back and look at, well, I just won't get into. I'm kind of getting really sidetracked here, but I'm trying to get you to understand what this swing indicator, how this swing indicator is working. But you can see here that there's kind of this this non-trend zone created here. So that's because this price broke the previous low, but what happens is a downtrend isn't established until the indicator can establish this lower low. All right, and so the indicator, when it's running in real time, this indicator is not going to know that this is a lower low until an uptrend is established, right? So price had to, so this uptrend line was not established until this bar right here. And let me draw an arrow on here. Oh. Yeah. So until we got this close way up here, then that's when the indicator was able to establish an uptrend, and it was able to establish that a lower low was created. So as soon as this lower low was created, plus we got plus price broke this previous low, then we were able to determine that we were in a downtrend. Now, if we look back, look at some of these other ones here. Like right here, you can see that even though we can see historically that price is moving back, but if you're right here in real time, you don't know that this is a double bottom yet until you step forward one more, keep going, price really still kind of floundering around, and then you get this huge up bar. And so by the time you get this up bar, price has moved up enough for the indicator to say that, you know, yes, we now kind of created this local upswing, this up move. And then since price broke the previous low, and so this one bar did several things. This one bar told the indicator that we can start looking for our next upswing, so this green line could start plotting. But also we broke this previous low high point, all in one bar. And the same thing happened over here as well. Let me shrink this up. So if we're on this, so if this is real time, we don't know that this is the lower high yet until we get a few bars along, in which case probably price had to move. Probably wasn't until this bar that the indicator was able to say, okay, you know, there was enough price movement that we now have this downtrend established. Actually, the red line probably started plotting around one of these two bars right here. But you can see that price hadn't broken below this previous low point. So a trend direction hadn't been created yet. A trend change in direction hadn't been created yet. until we got to this bar. So then this closing price finally broke below the previous low, and since we already had a downswing established, this one bar then was able to change the trend direction. So that's when it switched over to red as a downtrend. Now if I move over back to that void, so let's kind of step through this in real time. So we're right here. So we don't know that this is a higher high yet until price starts stepping down. So probably somewhere around here is when the indicator was able to say, okay, we can start a downswing. We can start a downswing, and so it would have detected this higher high. But price is still way up here and it hasn't broken the previous low yet. Okay, so now we're finally on this bar. So now price has broken the previous low and we're in a downtrend, but we haven't, but the indicator hasn't established a lower low yet. So we had to keep moving along. And this lower low hasn't been detected yet, right? We had to wait. You know, we can see it historically, but in real time, this would not have been determined until price moved up enough. You know, so it's probably somewhere along here. Actually, yeah, like on this bar. So on this bar is when finally this lower low was established. On this, when this bar came along, this lower low was established because a new upswing was detected by the indicator. So with this lower low detected, this break of the previous low, and this new upswing was detected, then we were able to get a downtrend determined. So you had to have, you know, all those conditions met, but primarily you had to have this lower low condition met with the break of the previous low. Okay, so with that all explained, now I can go in and go back. Now I can go back to the support resistance solver and show you what that filter is trying to do. So support resistance. So that must agree with swing trend, right? So this version of Bloodhound is telling us what the swing trend is. So if I set it to true, and let's put this back on, oops, let me put my type back to an absolute value. Okay. All right, so let's see, what's our value? It's at 3050. We're quite, oh, all right, let's, I'm going to change something on this Bloodhound. I'm going to turn the racing stripes off. There. All right, I'm going to switch this to Tailwind mode. It's a little easier to see how the must agree with swing trend. So it's easier to understand it when it's in Tailwind mode. Makes a little more sense. And let's see here. Just want to make sure things are lining up. So my absolute value is at 3050. This line is still at 3050. And let's see, our ideal distance is 5 ticks away. Let me kind of throw that on here real quick. So that's our 5 tick line. And there we go. All right. Let's see. So with this set off, we can see that these long signals were filtered out. Right? You can see these long signals are showing here when price is above our support line. We have the long signals. So remember, we're in Tailwind mode. Right. So normally you'd be looking for a long bounce trade off the support resistance line. So if I set this to true, now remember our trend, our swing trend direction is to the short side as indicated by this version of Bloodhound down here on the bottom. So if I turn this on, you see how it filters out the long trades. So in other words, the solver's output has to match what the swing trend direction is. So that is what this filter is trying to do. Is filter out these long trades here. And I do see that it looks like our swing trend is long, but we're still getting the short right here. I'm not sure why that is. I'll have to check it with Jeremy on that, see what's going on here. It could be I don't have, let me just check. Let me check this other instance of Bloodhound here. Let's see, so I have let's see, yeah, this swing trend, this long looks correct because we have this higher high. So our higher high established, essentially established an uptrend. So why, let's see, do I have something else turned on maybe? Usually I find it's some little setting I've forgotten about in my solver that's not creating the output that I'm expecting. Well, maybe as I move along, I might come across why we're getting the short, even though the trend direction is determined that we're in an uptrend direction. So, anyway, I don't want to get tied up and stuck on this. So let me move along, and maybe I'll find out what's causing this. So, no. Oh, hey, I see there's a whole bunch of questions coming in here. Let me kind of scan through them real quick because I'm almost done explaining the support resistance solver. So I'd like to try and wrap this up before the end of this class. But let me just read through these questions real quick. Let's see. Alfred is asking, hey Zach, please remember to demo the multiple entry exits on a single bar feature. Alfred, I'm not sure what you're talking about. NinjaTrader on a single bar feature. NinjaTrader doesn't allow that. You might be thinking of multi-charts or TradeStation, which I don't think. My use of multi-charts, I have multi-charts as well. I don't think they allow that either. So Alfred, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Let's see, Randy. All right, so Randy was making a comment about, I guess, when I was going over the swing trend. Let's see, not a lower low, double top. Let's see. All right, so here's a question from Randy. Does must agree with swing trend work with default settings? Does it work with default settings? Perhaps, and not the 0.5 ATRs you set for the other Bloodhound. Yeah, I think, Randy, I think what you're getting at is that in the support resistance solver, we don't, the only input we have is this swing sensitivity. We don't have the double top or double bottom. But I don't think the double top or double bottom setting, I don't think that affects the swing trend here. I don't think it affects that. Right, we're talking about this setting here, double top, double bottom with the 0.5 ATRs. The swing trend, I don't think it's really affected by this. What's really determining whether we're in a downtrend or an uptrend is really when price breaks the previous high or breaks the previous low, and we also need to, the indicator needs to have already determined the previous swing point. So, back to, let me see. Yeah, let me go way back to the beginning again and kind of point that out again. So let me find that void we were looking at. Okay, yeah, so right here, this void, right here. Yeah, so we can see this trend direction output down here at the bottom, right? So as soon as price broke the previous low, right? So it was a price action thing, which really isn't affected by whether this was a double bottom or a double top. It's just looking to say that price here on this bar broke the previous low, and we don't know what our trend direction is yet until this lower low point has been established. So once a lower low has been established, then we know that we're in a downtrend. Right, so this lower low doesn't get established until we get to this bar right here. And then the indicator says, well, price has moved up enough that we can say that this is the lower low for sure. So this point gets identified, and then the indicator can say, well, okay, we broke the previous low, and this lower low has been identified, so now we can determine that we're in a downtrend. So really this this double top, double bottom setting really isn't. I don't think it really affects. It doesn't affect this calculation here. So, all right. I see some other questions coming in, but let me try and wrap up this solver here. So maybe, yeah, I guess next week I'll try and cover using the channel and using, well, actually I can explain the price point interval pretty quickly. It's pretty simple. And let's see, let me put this, yeah, I'll leave it in Tailwind mode. So with price point set to true, and let's see, indicator, faults, interval. All right, so let me set my interval to 0.002. And I'm going to, well, I don't have to, I'll just do it without. All right. So my price interval is set to 0.002. And let's see, we're in Tailwind mode. And we still have a 5-tick and 10-tick. So what is happening? Let me move some lines around here. And we put some other lines in here, a couple more. There we go. Okay. So what I've done is by specifying this interval of 0.002, right? So what? So this solver is creating these intervals, which is gonna drop on, you know, like 0.3040 and 0.3060, and also up here at 0.3080, right? So you can see these are 0.002 intervals. I'll just copy another one up there. Right. So in this, on these 3 bars here, remember we're still using this 5-tick ideal distance, and we're in Tailwind mode. So price is below this price interval line, and it's within our 5-tick ideal distance. So we've got a short here. And then price keeps moving down. Oh, let me turn off, let me turn this off. There we go, more signals. So now price is above within 5 ticks, so we get a long. All right, price is below, so now we get short output. And then when price keeps coming down to the next interval, right, as soon as we're at 5 ticks, at our 5-tick distance, we can see we're getting long outputs until price breaks below the interval, and then we get the short output. Right, so that's how this price interval works. You can just specify, you know, what your interval distance is, and if you want, as you can see here, you can specify an upper or lower limit. So like this, I could turn this upper limit off if I wanted to. So this is at 3080. So where are we at? Upper limit. So 1.30. Let me turn it off to 3070. Yep. So now we can see there's no, Bloodhound isn't evaluating this interval line up here because we specified We told it not to. And then it's analyzing all the ones below it. So simple enough. Use the channel. Yeah, I probably should pick up with using the channel next week. So that's dealing with the regression channel. A little involved. Let's see, there's another setting in here I haven't covered yet. Let's see. Where did it go? Oh yeah, this one. Ignore if within range. So let's see, if I set this to 2 ticks, and let me kind of put the chart back to where it needs to be. And let's see, indicators on. All right, we're using an absolute value. We're in headwind mode. Actually, no, let me put this in tailwind mode. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so let's look at, let me circle the area that we're looking at, which is right here, these 3 bars right here. So you can see the price, the closing price is 1 tick above our support resistance line of 0.3050. All right. Now let me set this back to 0. So the normal setting is 0. All right. So we can see we're getting a long output on these 2 bars. Right. So we're getting a long output on these 2 bars. Let me mark them here. Oops. That guy and that guy. Now I could not set to ignore if price is within 2 ticks. Right. So the closing price is actually 1 tick away from the support resistance line, but I told it to ignore if we're within 2 ticks. All right, since they're 1 tick away, they're within this 2 tick range. So essentially what I've done is, let me copy this line. So now, if I use this ignore within range of 2 ticks, and now anything between this support line and this 2 tick, which is 2 ticks above, it also would be 2 ticks below as well, because it creates a range. Right, so there. So now anything within this, the range of this, the dotted line, the 2 dotted lines, is ignored. No, there's no output. Right, so we can see that even this short output right here, normally this would give us a short output because you can see price is right 1 tick below our line. So let me turn this off again, set it to 0. That's right, so there's our short output because price broke below that support line. But I set this, turn this 2 tick on, that short got turned off as well. So anything within this 2 tick range of our support resistance value is ignored. So you may you may choose to use this ignore value in case you wanted to also use the indicator comparison. So let me set this guy up here. And in order to see this effectively, I'm going to have to use an OR node. There we go. So what I've done is this indicator comparison. Right? If you remember earlier on, I'm using that indicator comparison solver here, and I'm looking for these neutral zones. So that's giving me this long and short when I'm within this zone area. And then I use the, and then I have the support resistance solver that I can use. So what this allows me to do is that, you know, price movement is never an exact movement, right? So you kind of want to create these areas. So even though, so you may want to allow for like a 2-tick penetration of price below our support line. And so you can set the support resistance solver to ignore this 2-tick range and then use this indicator comparison solver to analyze that 2-tick range and still give us, so even though price, you can see even though price is below, let me kind of get the chart stretched out here. Yeah. So even though the price of them, and delete that circle. So even though price broke below our support line, we can still get a long value out of a solver to still possibly evaluate taking a long signal or a long trade, you know, bounce off of the support line by using by using this indicator comparison. So all right, so let's see. So we got, so that's what that ignore allows you to do. Is that essentially it turns the output off of the solver if you're within this ignore range. So and okay, let's see. I haven't covered this no support resistance breakout. Let me show you what that does. And I'm going to delete this so it doesn't interfere with the just using Bloodhound on the solver tab. All right, so if I set this to 1, and let me set this to 0. So all we're looking at is this no support resistance breakout. So in other words, if there's no support above, if there's no support below or no resistance above, then the solver will give us a 1 on the output. So here, let me turn this off, and so we can see whenever price, oh wait, what mode am I in? Tailwind mode. No, there we go. This setting is better used in headwind mode. So as we can see in tailwind mode, it's whenever price is above, it's saying that it's okay to go short into the support line, and then as soon as price breaks below that line, it's saying it's okay to go long into it. But so it's better used in headwind mode. So let me switch this over to headwind mode. Set that to 0, set that to 1. Okay, that makes more sense, right? So since there's no resistance above, as soon as price breaks above that line, the solver says there's no resistance ahead, so you're okay to take a long trade. And then as soon as price breaks below, the solver knows that there's no support below, and so you're okay to take a long or a short trade anytime. As soon as you break below the last support line, and there's no more support lines below, then the solver knows that, and it says you're clear to take a short trade from here on out. You know, so most commonly, a more practical use would be, let me pull an indicator up, and wow, I'm running out of time. So let's see if I can show this real quick here. Then I'll try and get to your guys' questions. So I'm going to put the pivots on there, and let me just turn on 2 of these lines, and I'd better add that indicator that says chart so we can see what's going on. All right, and so what I'm doing is I'm turning off all the plots except for R1 and S1. And hopefully, let's see. Okay, just want to make sure the solver set up right. Okay, so headwind mode, and this is what we're looking for. Okay, so as soon as this is S1, oh, so the pivots is way up there. Let me just kind of scan through the chart here real quick and see if I get a plot. Oh, doesn't look like price ever broke out of the S1 or R1. So let me add some more data to the chart. Okay, so there we can see the R1 and we can see S1 here. Now, let me check the solver again, make sure I got it. Make sure I selected the correct plots. And I'm wondering, let's see, daily, oh, okay, daily bars with, right, Randy, yeah, you say no output because I have it set to 20 ticks, but see, I have these plots turned off. So Randy was saying no output because you have it set to 20 ticks. Yes, but the 20 ticks is the ideal distance, and I have it turned off. What I'm looking for is this no support resistance area, which when I get this set up correctly, there we go. There we go. I just had to initialize something. So you can see whenever price breaks above this last resistance area, which is this R1 blue line, we can see we have, so as soon as price breaks below the highest resistance line, we're all clear to take a long trade because there's no more resistance lines above here. So let me delete that line. Let me delete this old stuff here so it's not confusing. And let me delete that guy. There, it's easier to see. All right, so price breaks above our last resistance line, and as soon as we get above it, there's no more resistance up ahead, and so we're all clear to take as many long trades as we want. That's what this solver is. So that's what this output does here. So if I set it to 0, there we go, turns it off. And set this to 1 again, so now we're back to our default mode here. So let me see if we have any short outputs. Yeah, here we go. So, all right, so there's S1. So apparently our pivots are way up above. Let's shrink this guy down. Yeah. So here's our 3 pivot lines. And so price is below our S1. And so we can see the solver is telling us we're all clear to take as many shorts as we want because there's no more support below the S1. So we're all clear to take a short. So that's what this guy does. All right, so let me get to your guys' questions, and we'll wrap this up. Let's see. So Gavin is asking, is it possible to see how the buy-sell signals are generated? BT of a newbie question. Let's see. Is it possible to see how the buy-sell signals are generated? That's pretty open-ended question, Gavin. I'm not sure exactly what you mean. I can tell you the way the way the buy-sell signals are generated are by how you have your solver set up, right? So right now I have just this one support resistance solver turned on. Actually, let me show you the indicator comparison solver. It's a little easier. And so whenever price is within this neutral zone, which is I have it set to 2 ticks, and also let's see. So we're comparing the closing price to this absolute value of 1.3050, which is represented by this red dashed line. And so whenever price is within, see this 2-tick area, so here's our output. So this is what's controlling our output, is how these outputs are set. And so we can see that whenever price is within a 2-tick range, which I'll move these lines up. So these white lines represent the 2-tick range. And so so these output sections essentially is what is controlling when the solver plots an output. Yeah, oops. Turn off the alarm. So it's a pretty open-ended question, Gavin. So I'm not sure how to give you a good simple answer, but you know, by depending on what output you want to select, and depending on what you know, what criteria you're looking for, kind of determines how the output is set. So now what I did is I changed the output here so that whenever the closing price is greater than this absolute value by 2 ticks, well, actually make it simple, by 0 ticks. So whenever the closing price is above this absolute value or below this absolute value, we'll get an output. All right, so we can see price is above our absolute value, which is the red dashed line, and we get a long output. And as soon as price is below it, over in this area, we get a short output. So that's how the outputs are generated. Is by, you know, determined by how you set up each of your solvers and how you set up your outputs and how you set up your parameters here, which control the outputs. So let's see, Randy, just looking for why you got a short output when swing trend was indicating long only. Sorry, Randy, I didn't get to that question in time. Let's see, Glenn, can the ideal distance be negative to allow shorts as price is approaching the band? You know, this wasn't designed to put negative values in here, and so you can put negative values in there, but you're going to get some really unexpected results if you do that. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, so I can see that by looking at the output that even though, so I think some safeguards have been put into these so that if you put anything below 0, essentially it's only using 0. It's not going to allow you to put negative numbers in there. So, because you could get some programming errors when you start putting in negative numbers. You know, when you're programming, sometimes using zeros are dangerous because you could get divide by 0 errors in your code. So it looks like Jeremy put some safeguards in here where if you put a negative number in, internally it's just going to set this number to 0 as the safeguard. So I can see that whenever price actually equals our absolute value, that's when we're getting a Bloodhound. That's when we're getting an output from the solver here. So to answer your question, Gavin, the answer would be no. But I'm sure there's another way to do what you're wanting. Let's see. I'm sorry, that was Glenn. So yeah, so Glenn, you're wanting to well, I guess, Glenn, there's not enough information on your question, but your question again is, can the ideal distance be negative to allow shorts as price approaches the band? Well, I guess it depends, Glenn, on what direction is price approaching the band from. Is it approaching the band from below the band or above the band to get a short? You know, 'cause that kind of changes things. Let's see here. Let's see. I'm just scanning through the questions here, guys. Okay, Glenn. So he's saying as price coming down from above. All right. So is price coming down from above? So let's take a look at this again. And also, Glenn, it depends on what mode you're thinking about using too. I'm assuming from your question, it sounds like you're thinking about using Tailwind mode, which Tailwind mode is more for detecting proximity. So let's see here. Make sure. Oh, okay, let me put this back to the absolute value again. There we go. All right. So Glenn, I believe you're wanting instead of a long, you're wanting a short output when price is approaching from above, is approaching our support line. So let's see. Yeah, I don't really see a way of doing that. Not with this solver. The solver was not intended for doing that. But as I showed, showed earlier, if you're just using one support resistance line, you could use the indicator comparison instead. Right, so we can see that. So if I set this to 5 tick, if I create a 5 tick range, so as price is above our support line here, then we can see we have a long and a short output, which is okay because your other solvers would filter out whether you're taking a long or short trade. So this solver, so setting this solver up this way just says, hey, you're clear to take a trade either direction, and then use other solvers to filter out that you actually want to take a short trade here. So that's one way to do it, Glenn. When version 1.1 comes out, there's going to be some function nodes, and you can use those function nodes to kind of convert the output here. So you can use these function nodes to manipulate the output of any one particular solver. So you could convert these long outputs into short outputs if you wanted to. So that's coming, Glenn. Let's see. I think, Glenn, we're hoping to release a beta version in about a month's time. So like mid October sometime, I believe, is when we're going to release a beta version. So you know what? It's time to call Jeremy in because I really need to wrap this up. So Jeremy, if you're out there, would you care to speculate on when you think we'll be able to release a beta version of 1.1?
Zach, yeah, I'm not sure if we are sort of prepared to stick to any timeline right now. Just the 1.1 is sort of in flux, and we've got some more ideas that we want to throw in there, and what you saw was quite preliminary. I mean, it could change significantly by the time we're ready, and typically we don't want to actually announce a beta until we're at least feature locked. And so I've been sort of telling people next month, vaguely, but it's like I said, it's really up in the air, and I don't want to sort of give anybody sort of expectations about when it could be out. Um, you know, um, Instead, it sort of allow us to spend the time and make it a solid product before we start giving it out to people. Because last thing is also we don't want to do is sort of give it to people and then have, say, the file format change, and then people do a lot of work with the beta, and when they discover the final product is done, it's completely different. They're actually unable to load their template files because functionality has changed. So we want to avoid that as well. We don't want to prematurely give out the beta before we're feature locked. So I'm afraid that's probably not the answer you're looking for, but it's sort of the best we can sort of do at this point in time.
Okay, guys. Well, we're just gonna wrap it up with that then. This went on for, it was a 2-hour session, and but then again, this support resistance solver is probably the most difficult one to understand. Like I said, next week we will start off. I'll wrap this solver up because I still need to talk about using the channel and explain, kind of demonstrate how the channel is used with this solver. So, all right, guys, thank you very much. And next week, let's see, I have a question from, let's see, I believe it's Gavin. One of you guys had asked me to demonstrate or show how to do one of their setups on the workshop, and so next week that's what I'm going to be doing. I thought it was a pretty good question because it involves multiple time frames and lots of indicators, but actually putting it together in Bloodhound is really simple. It was actually probably took me a lot longer to set up my chart. So what looks to be complicated, on the chart is actually very simple in Bloodhound, and so that's what I'm going to cover for next week's, try and get to for next week's workshop. But also I have a couple of these other solvers to go over as well, which are pretty simple. So that's what we got going for next week. And if you have any ideas that you'd like to see in the workshop, please submit your ideas and questions on our support form, and we'd be glad to demonstrate any kind of question or system that you guys would like us to cover on the workshop, right? So send those in. Appreciate it, guys. All right. Have a good rest of your week. Bye-bye.